Before starting graduate school, I scrolled through hours worth of internet content on advice for first year students. I watched video after video and read blog post after blog post about how to be organized, how to save money, mistakes to avoid, habits to build ad nauseum. However, much to my disappointment, and despite all of my preparation, I still felt massively unprepared for what my first year of graduate school would hold for me. And this was such a frustration for me that there were several days, my first semester and even some during my second semester, where I felt like maybe applying to graduate school in the first place was a mistake, and a big one at that. But I confided in a dear friend of mine about this. I said to her, I knew coming into graduate school that this is going to be insanely hard, yet it still feels like I am trying to learn everything the hard way. But what she said in response struck me, and still resonates with me now. She said, maybe it's not that you're learning things the hard way, but that you're learning things in a tangible way. Maybe there are some things you can only truly understand by experience. And this changed my whole perspective on the issue. In fact, it's affected how I see other things in life, not just school. But I realized that instead of trying to ascertain the lesson in all of these challenges that I'm facing, it would be much more fruitful to just fully experience the challenge and then direct my actions towards the experience I want to have in graduate school. So what I hope to do in this video is to share with you 3 of the lessons that I had to learn tangibly. Of course, I can't do the learning for you, but it is my sincere belief that if I had known earlier that these were going to be tangible lessons, my learning curve wouldn't have been as steep because I would have been more receptive to the experiences I was having. So here we go. The first tangible lesson is that grad school will feel pointless. Let me be clear, by the way. I love what I do. I really do. I thoroughly enjoy my studies. I love being a teaching assistant. I'm happy with where I'm at. And these pursuits are all fruitful in their own right. But not always. There have been some weeks when I want Friday to get here as soon as possible. And I had what felt like a mountain of homework due every week, which can really suck the joy out of even the most dedicated students. I was reminded daily that I am not as good at math as I think I am, and I will never be as good at it as I want to be. And with all of these negative factors in the mix, it can be really easy to become apathetic. Not just towards school, but even your relationships, your responsibilities, and your hobbies. It's a pretty dark place to be. And it took hard work and the support of my friends and family for me to get out of this rut. But I found that a good remedy for this is to have things that are meaningful to you outside of your schoolwork. Now, to clarify, meaningful is not to be synonymous with makes you happy. After all, during my rut, I was regularly doing things that made me happy, like I was hanging out with friends and going to church, playing guitar, etc. Happiness, as it turns out though, is meaningless if you don't work for it. The thing that really helped me feel better, ironically, was letting things outside of school demand more of me. I started investing in my friends and family more, and trying to find ways to do favors for them just because. I started serving in church more than just attending, and I tried writing music and learning to play difficult songs instead of just noodling around on the guitar. Once, I felt like I was on top of the world just because I brought candy to share with my classmates and professors. So really all that is to say that the path to contentment is not to seek things that make you feel good, but to find things that demand something of you outside of your schoolwork. Because, let's be honest, humans aren't really built for consumption. You can't just be pumping in good things, you have to be giving a bit too. The second principle is parallel to this one I just brought up, and that is you need to learn how to rest properly. My first semester of graduate school, I found myself perplexed, not just because of the content I had to learn, but because of this apparent paradox. When I finished working on my studies and teaching responsibilities for the day, I would just shut off my brain for a good few hours and scroll around on my phone. And some nights I would hang out with friends for a bit. I was getting plenty of sleep, yet I was always so burnt out. I didn't get it. I was resting on a daily basis. Why am I so drained all the time? The answer didn't come to me until much later. And I think I got the answer from the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, but I'm not sure. Great book, by the way. This video is not sponsored in any way. I just really like the book. But one of the ideas from the book, I think, is the idea that rest is not merely the absence of work. Rest is fulfillment outside of your work. That was the problem with just shutting off my brain and calling it rest. I mean, think about it. Your car doesn't refuel just because you stop driving it. You have to put fuel back in it. And in fact, to refuel yourself, you actually have to expend some energy. For myself, I found that things like regular exercise, eating healthy foods, making time for religious devotion, reading books that weren't about the things I was learning in school, just things I was interested in, helped me feel much more energized, even though these practices take discipline and effort. Now, that is not to say that you shouldn't turn off your brain. I am a strong advocate of putting things in their place, so I have a limit. No schoolwork, and that includes responding to emails before 8:30 a.m. or after 8:30 p.m., unless I have to, and no schoolwork on Sunday, again, unless I absolutely have to. And these times might seem a bit early, but I'm a morning person, so it just works for me. What works for you may be different. And also, I didn't keep these rules all the time. Life happens. But the principle alone was so helpful. And it may seem counterproductive to have a cap on how long you're allowed to work, but it actually boosts productivity in two ways. One, if you know that you have a limited amount of time to work, you will be much more focused on your work while you have time. Deadlines are your friend. And two, your brain and body are of no use to you if you're tired. I think I read somewhere that being sleep deprived can have the same effect on your body as being over the legal limit for blood alcohol content, which is a pretty scary statistic, and also why you shouldn't drive while tired. That's besides the point. The point is that sometimes not working is the most productive thing you can do for yourself. And finally, while on the topic of work, the hardest lesson that I had to learn, it's not about being smart. It's about working hard. In fact, it's not always about working hard either, but working efficiently. What made this lesson particularly hard for me to learn is that I have a pride issue, and that is only exacerbated by my perfectionism. I want to be the best at what I do, but I'm just not. And if you're in graduate school, you're going to be surrounded by smart people. Most likely people far smarter than you. So your intelligence isn't going to serve you much. But when you read the lives of successful people in the world, you find such diversity of backgrounds. Some were born into riches, others into poverty. Some had innate talent, while others had to practice for hours on a daily basis just to be decent at what they did. But the one commonality of all of them is that they did the hard work that no one else wants to do, even if they themselves didn't want to do it. And this is where I will plug another not sponsored shout out to Cal Newport for his book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, which I personally think is a must read for every graduate student. This book explains in great detail how exactly people become good at what they do by working hard. That said, it's not always about working hard either. I learned very quickly in grad school that you don't have time for everything, and that unfortunately includes school. You don't always have time for school. Isn't that wild? You don't have the time or even energy to study as much as you want to. And some weeks you'll barely get assignments done on time, if at all. You have to learn to pick which battles are worth fighting. For example, now I don't recommend this exact strategy, it's just something that worked for me. I had a professor whose teaching method was essentially just to read the textbook to us. And to make matters worse, he went through pretty quickly, and so I struggled to take notes and to actively gauge how much of the lecture I was actually understanding. And so I just quit coming to this class. I went to my other classes, it was just this one that I stopped showing up to. And it was as if a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. I would just take the time that I would be in class to work on homework and to read the book myself. I just felt so much more free because I wasn't wasting time on something that honestly wasn't contributing that much to my learning. Or I had some other classes where the lowest assignment grade would get dropped. So if there was a week that I was so overwhelmed I couldn't do all the work, I would just take advantage of the fact that this assignment wouldn't affect my grade. So I wouldn't worry about it. Now, again, I'm not advocating laziness or being a bad student or giving subpar effort. Okay, like you should go to class. You should do your homework. You should study. These are important things. They're good. Do them. What I'm saying is you cannot, in practice, do everything asked of you. I really wished I could. I just couldn't. And so you need to figure out how to be cost effective with your time. Nothing in life is free, and that still holds true when the currency is time. So, these are the 3 most important tangible lessons I learned this year in graduate school. It's going to feel pointless, so you need to find fulfilling work outside of your schoolwork. You need to learn to rest properly, and remember, resting is not the same as turning off your brain, although it includes it. And success in grad school is an odd mixture of not just intelligence, but hard work and efficiency. So that said, for all of you going off to graduate school, or any higher education, I suppose, I wish you all the best of luck. And I hope that these tangible lessons I shared with you help you make the most of your grad school experience.